Welcome to Narrative Nook Audio Tales, where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Dino came in front of room 401 and gave it a couple of gentle knocks. When no one responded, he walked over to room 402 and knocked on the door again, and then said politely, "Hello, I have brought what you want." Nicole closed the lid of the laptop, got up to open the door with a straight face, and saw Dino's equally nonchalant, almost cavalier face outside. Dino handed her 2 gilded red papers and bowed respectfully. "You two have a nice day." Nicole nodded and gently closed the door back. She did not ask why Dino delivered the tickets in person. Nicole was not a new guest and did not need the pickup service of the hotel. So, he stood up straight again and quickly left. "Who was it?" Zeke asked in puzzlement when Nicole turned back inside. Nicole did not answer but looked at the time on the red paper, which stated that the session started at 9:00 p.m. It was only 4:00 p.m. now. So, she threw a ticket to Zeke and said casually, "Do you want to have a duel with me in the Imperial Palace?" Zeke's eyes lit up, and he nodded quickly. The Imperial Palace was a computer game that he and Nicole often played to kill time. The characters in the game were challenging to play, and the two often competed online during free time. Zeke had never beaten Nicole before, but it did not affect his enthusiasm at the mention of this game. They turned on their computers, and as usual, they registered 2 new characters and started afresh. Nicole had always chosen assassin-type characters, which had extremely high damage rates but low health rates. It was almost difficult to win with this kind of character when encountering a competent swordsman player, making assassin-type characters very challenging to play. Zeke thought Nicole would choose ghost hand-type assassins as before, not expecting that she had chosen a shooter emperor who glowed in faint gold this time. Zeke looked at his swordsman, who he had selected on the screen, and cried out, "You're cheating, Nicole." He could not even beat her assassin character, let alone a shooter. "I'm just training a new hero," Nicole said expressionlessly. Zeke looked at her suspiciously. Seeing the genuine look on her face, he reluctantly agreed to play 1 round with her. He was ready to be beaten by Nicole, but it turned out that Nicole was a total amateur in playing the shooter. She performed skills indiscriminately and even lunged up at his swordsman and got killed 5 times. Zeke was grinning ear to ear as his character wielded a massive saber, frantically pursuing the small shooter. As he swiftly hit the attack button a few times, the health bar over the head of Nicole's shooter quickly dropped, and soon the shooter dropped dead to the ground. Nicole calmly took a sip of water as she looked at the screen that had turned black for the 6th time. "1 more round," Nicole said. "1 more round?" Zeke would not refuse. He looked at Nicole. She did not look like she was angry, so he was happy for another round. This time, he called up an assassin character that he had never been good at. As soon as his character showed up, he put his character in cloak mode, directed it to move up in front of Nicole's shooter, and made another kill. Looking at the flimsy shooter dropping dead on the ground, Zeke's laughter filled the room. "Ha ha ha, serve you right, Nicole." There was no change in Nicole's expression, and she started tapping the keyboard gently. It was a sign of her immutability. Zeke had no clue what that meant and invited her for another round. Nicole looked nonchalantly at him, but Zeke still did not understand what she meant. He started another round. "This time, I will choose to play a nanny." "Oh, Lucifer, I didn't know that you were such a noob playing the shooter. I am getting my revenge this time." Nicole was stubbornly confident. She looked at her shooter and browsed through the character's skills once again, making sure that there was nothing wrong with what she saw, and then clicked the confirm button. The game started again. Zeke directed the cute little assistant and slowly walked toward the front line. The nanny's basic movement speed was not too fast, and her spell damage rate was low. This was an auxiliary character with a healthy level not much different from that of Nicole's shooter. Zeke might be ridiculing Nicole, but because of the character's original attributes, he did not take his opponent lightly. He carefully directed the nanny to approach the opponent near the river, performing a skill tentatively. Zeke was relieved when seeing no response from Nicole's shooter. He swaggered out and assaulted Nicole's shooter while adding health to his nanny from time to time so that her health kept staying at a safe level. The shooter did not possess self-healing ability and was finally killed by Zeke's character. Ironically, when the shooter's health bar was about to be depleted completely, the nanny performed a burst attack and killed the poor shooter, who was already emitting a faint dying glow instantly. Zeke could not help himself and burst into laughter this time. "I didn't expect that I could beat you with a nanny. Lucifer, you are too lame. If the people on the Hunters know about it, they will laugh their heads off. I have got to record the screen to prove that I have beaten Lucifer." Nicole looked at Zeke, whose baby face flushed from excitement, and said nonchalantly, "I dare you." Zeke looked at her expression, his laughter stopping, turning into awful, hollow laughter instead, as he knew he really did not dare. Nicole only felt better when she saw Zeke's face. She shoved her laptop into her bag and walked over to Zeke. "Let's go," she uttered with her eyebrow raised. Zeke immediately got up and obligingly followed her out of the room. While going, he secretly typed on his mobile phone, "I can't believe I have beaten Lucifer in the Imperial Palace," and posted it on the Hunters. He had a habit of recording these trivial things. Since he found no privacy at home, he recorded things on this hacker's exclusive website. On the other side of the ocean, the tech guy who tracked Lucifer and Spectre's whereabouts 24/7 had almost fallen asleep. Spectre and Lucifer had not surfaced for almost half a month, so he scanned Spectre's messages every day, hoping to find a clue. Just when he was about to give up, something popped up, and the monitor screens in front of them were bursting with activities. The tech guy woke up instantly. Looking at the lines of code that popped up on the computer screen, he hit the keyboard with a swift motion, and his eyes lit up. He tilted his head to clip his mobile phone to his neck to make a phone call. "Max, we are going to parse the code and identity of Spectre. The program is already running, and we will have the result in 10 minutes. Max was excited and sneezed. Claus looked at him helplessly and said, "You shouldn't come to work if you have flu." Claus was tough enough to expose to the rain the entire night without getting sick. But not Max, who was just a civilian. He might go to the gym occasionally, but he was not resistant enough when getting wet in chilly rain in the middle of the night. So, he caught a cold, unfortunately. Max ignored Claus, got up, and said quickly into the phone, "Track it down and notify me as soon as you have the results. I'm going to the office now." He put on his coat and was about to head out. Claus quickly followed, took out the car key, and said to Max, "You are sick and must not drive. I will drive you there." He then went to collect his car. Max looked at Claus from behind. Instead of stopping Max, he called to alert Jared about the finding. Jared, who looked bored on the other end of the phone, heard the news and was excited. He had never given up trying to catch Lucifer, who was the only person who caused him massive losses. "Keep an eye on it. Once things in Nottingbrook State are done, I will rush back immediately." Suppressing his cough, Max whispered his acknowledgement and hung up the phone. Claus had driven the car over. Max got in, and the two of them hurried to the J.J. Johnston Group office in Hustruberg. While on the way, Max did not make a sound, just frowning and thinking about something. Spectre and Lucifer have always been very cautious and never appeared at all until now. What are they up to when they suddenly pop up on the radar? Meanwhile, Zeke followed Nicole out of the manor. He did not even give a damn about the sarcasm of the guard at the gate, but gleefully hopped onto the handsome motorcycle. Nicole gently cocked an eyebrow at seeing Zeke's triumphant smile. She then got onto her bike and fired up the engine. It was nightfall. As she revved the engine to the red line, the bike roared and launched forward like a bolt, leaving only Zeke's terrified screams behind. Right after Nicole and Zeke left, a familiar woman's voice spoke. "Jared, will you take me with you? I'd especially like to see what is at the gold session of the Moon House." The person who spoke was none other than Chloe. Jared was walking in front with an expressionless face, but he had a forbidding look in his eyes, making him look unapproachable. He suddenly looked in a direction where he saw a silver, white light zoom past and quickly disappear. Dino behind him caught up with him and said, "That thing seems to be a Dodge Tomahawk." "What Tomahawk?" Chloe asked in puzzlement. She only heard about tomahawk steak, wondering what the guy beside Jared said. Jared squinted his eyes and was too lazy to answer her question. He did not get proper sleep for the past few days and felt grumpy. Dodge Tomahawk was the most extreme motorcycle produced by the Truman family in Macronia. The vehicle could reach a maximum speed of over 600 km per hour, which was considered the limit for all motorcycles and land-based vehicles. No one knew how the Dodge Tomahawk was made. Even the Tuman family had only built 2, one of which was kept in Macrunia for research, and no one knew where the other one was. Dino looked in a direction and could not even see the dust and smoke that was left behind by the Dodge. He could not believe that he would see this rare thing here. The best thing about the Dodge Tomahawk was not its speed, but unfortunately, few people in the world knew about it. He opened the door for Jared, and Jared got in the vehicle at once. The vehicle was a low-key, black off-roader with the emblem of a blooming flower. The vehicle's body exuded a sense of classiness. Chloe seemed to want to say something and followed him, but Dino had closed the car door, blocking her view of the inside. Chloe shot a glare at Dino, feeling upset because not even Jared had ever treated her like this, yet his staff was so rude to her. Dino did not give a damn and looked at Chloe with a straight face, his intention clear, which was to ask her to leave. While they were in a confrontation, the rear window rolled down, revealing Jared's charmingly sharp face. "Dino, get in the car," he said coldly. Chloe tried to talk to him, but Jared just glanced at her unsmilingly and then said to Dino with a half-smile, "Let her tag along if she wishes to follow." That being said, his action seemed otherwise. Dino got the hint and climbed into the front passenger seat. The car started up and drove in the same direction where the silver-white motorcycle had gone, at speed no slower than the motorcycle, and quickly disappeared from Chloe's sight. Chloe gritted her teeth and turned back to get into the red BMW supercar that Luca was driving. She shouted at Luca, "Why come so slow, you stupid? Keep up with them. Didn't you tell me not to come so quickly so that you could get a ride in Jared's car?" Luca thought to himself. But looking at Chloe's angry face, he could say nothing, just keeping his frustration to himself. He stepped hard on the accelerator to follow the car in front of him. People could only see one black and one white vehicle zooming past at high speed while a supercar was trying hard to keep up behind them. The desert in Nottingbrook State was vast. After the Dodge Tomahawk left the city, it sped through the endless yellow sand with a hot wind blowing on Nicole's face. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, making her look indescribably stunning. The clash of cold and hot was destined to end up melting together. They finally reached their destination. Excitement had left Zeke's face and been replaced by a look of numbness. How could he have forgotten that Nicole was such a speedster? Nicole patted him in the face and said in a rare gentle voice, "Get up, go in and take a rest." Zeke gave her a complicated look and asked, "Have you ever had a pillion rider?" Nicole nodded and then shook her head. "There was one once. But he vomited his guts out after that." As if remembering what happened back then, a smile crept across Nicole's face. She helped Zeke get down from the bike and then led him forward. Zeke looked at the desert in front of him, not knowing why Nicole had brought him here. Nicole saw his doubts and explained, "We can only go on foot from here onward." She brought Zeke and walked for about 5 minutes, and a massive white architecture appeared in front of them. The style of the building was superficially similar to that of the castle, but it looked cooler overall, and the shape of it resembled the king of the chess pieces, looking quite imaginative. There were 2 guards at the gate. When the guards saw them, they held out their hands to stop them from going forward. Nicole took out the red piece of paper and handed it to them with a straight face, then shot Zeke a look, reminding him to do the same. Zeke came to his senses and took the red gilded paper out of his pocket. As soon as the guards saw the paper, they became more respectful instantly. "Please come in. The gold session welcomes you." Zeke looked at what happened with puzzlement. But he quickly came out of his daze and followed Nicole when Nicole walked in calmly. One of the guards took the 2 of them inside, the ground floor of which was massive with low-key but luxurious decoration. Zeke thought the guard would take them to go upstairs. After all, the building looked tall on the outside. But he was wrong. The guard led them to an elevator, and then they took the elevator all the way down. The moment the elevator door opened, the heat had gone, and cool gentle wind greeted them on their faces. This should be deep underground, Zeke thought. When the elevator door was fully open, Zeke looked at the scene in front of him with his mouth agape. It was a massive auction house. At this time, the auction hall was packed. People were wearing a very special masks on their faces, and no one turned their heads to look at them when the elevator door opened. Coming down from the elevator were all noble guests of the auction house. Those who stayed on the 1st and 2nd floors were not qualified to look back at these people. Nicole took a baseball cap out of nowhere and put it on Zeke's head. Like herself, the brim was lowered. The guard led them through a special passage directly to the second floor of the auction house, all the way to the end of the passage before they stopped. The guard looked back at Nicole and ushered them to enter respectfully. "Please." Zeke followed Nicole inside. There was a massive electronic screen, 2 tightly pulled red curtains next to it, and some different metal barcodes in front of the electronic screen, with different numbers written on them, and many gold and silver buttons around. Seeing the doubts on Zeke's face, the guard explained, "The box has a real-time broadcast of the auction. You can see the item being auctioned in real time. Of course, if you are not convinced enough, you can always draw open the curtain to see with your own eyes. Your position is almost next to the auction table, so you can see things clearly. I hope you have a great time." Nicole nodded gently. The guard apparently knew who was in charge here and knew what Nicole thought. So, he quickly left. Zeke was excited and wanted to ask questions, but Nicole gave him a quiet gesture. She took her laptop out of the bag, quickly connected it to an internet port in the box, and said, "I'm going to intercept the signal of this box in a moment. Feel free to do whatever you want, but don't disturb me." She then quickly got into a working mode, hitting the keyboard gently and then quietly waiting for when the signal of the auction house was connected. Zeke quickly understood what she was going to do. She wanted to dispose of her data. So, he did not bother her, just curiously walked to the side of the electronic screen and carefully lifted a corner of the curtain. Outside, things were becoming lively as a hot blonde beauty stepped onto the stage, and the audience quietened down. As the auctioneer made his opening remark with a smile, Nicole's eyes intercepted the signal between the electronic screen of this box and the auction house. She replaced it with her own computer terminal and disguised it as that of the auction house. "Thank you for coming to our gold session at the Moon House, where there are only things you can't think of and where there is nothing we can't auction. I wish everyone good luck and happy bidding." There was warm applause from the audience, and all eyes were on stage, waiting for the auction to begin. Zeke was also sitting on the soft couch in the box, looking at the stage. The box next door seemed to have been occupied, as he could faintly hear a familiar woman's voice. He listened carefully and could not believe that it was Chloe. Looking in that direction with surprise, he saw the box was the closest box to the stage, and it was also the largest of all the boxes. He looked back at Nicole, who had apparently heard it too. Nicole had a frosty look in her eyes. She had already realized that Chloe was the daughter of Miley, the wife of Damien from the Riddle family. Chloe was an actress, the woman whom she saw sitting across from Jared in the cafe that day. Nicole had mixed feelings when she thought of Jared. She heard from Max that Jared was also in Nottingbrook State. Just that she did not know where exactly he was, and they might have little chance to meet. Nicole lowered her eyes to hide her melancholy. She gathered herself and continued to focus on the screen in front of her. Time wore on. The Moon House's security system was hard to hack into. But looking at the progress bar on the screen, a smile crept across Nicole's face. Soon, she broke into the Moon House's internet and searched quickly for information related to her actual name. Because of the massive amount of data, it needed time. Nicole let the computer do its job while she got up and looked at Zeke. Zeke wished he could poke his head out of the curtain. When he saw Nicole come out, he quickly said, "It is a pity that you didn't see what I saw. You missed a lot. If it weren't for the old man's strict control of my finances, I would have bid for a few pieces of goods." At this point, Zeke screwed up his face in regret. Nicole raised an eyebrow with interest and then looked slightly stunned at the scene outside of the curtain. The auction this time had so much to offer. Her attention was drawn to the stage outside the curtain. After the blonde beauty sent down an auction item, she shouted passionately, "The following items are crystals produced in the Gulf of New Guinea. Their purity is, of course, guaranteed. The feature item of this batch of crystals is our main lot in this auction, a 10-carat pink diamond with an IF purity level. It is flawless." Speaking of which, several tall-built crews came up with trays on their hands. The trays contained brilliant white crystals, which seemed to be crystal deposits, and the last tray was covered by a red cloth. As soon as the blonde's voice trailed off, a crew came up, unveiled the tray, and took a spotlight to shine on the contents of the tray. Another crew raised a whiteboard behind the tray. When light shone on the tray, and the reflection appeared on the whiteboard. Everyone exclaimed in amazement. The diamond got so much attention for no other reason than its extreme beauty. The crystal-clear diamond, internally flawless, reflected a pale pink light. Anyone in the know would instantly recognize it at a glance. The blonde looked at the covetous faces of the audience with delight. She raised the auction hammer in the air and proclaimed loudly, "The Moon House has set this pink diamond reserve price at $50 million. There was an instant uproar. But those who came here are not ordinary people. Most of them were nonchalant at hearing the reserved price. After all, it was a 10-carat, flawless pink diamond, and it had not been named yet. The reserved price could be said to be very fair. Soon someone held up a sign and said, 51 million. Zeke looked at the beautiful diamond and struggled internally. He was contemplating bidding for it first and asked the old man for money later. Nicole read his expression and asked, "You want it?" Zeke looked at her and hesitated to tell her he wanted to give it to her. But still, nodded at last. Just as the two were talking, the price had been raised to $65 million. Nicole squinted at the pink diamond, and before she could hit the button, someone next door had raised the bid. Every private box had a widescreen display showing the bidding prices, and people could place their bids from the private box. Every time the price was raised, a bell would ring. At this moment, the bell rang, sounding like a thunderbolt. Zeke covered his ears dreadfully. It scared the hell out of me. The blonde looked at the box that had placed the bid with a strange look in her eyes. But she quickly announced enthusiastically, 70 million from box 1. Is there any higher? Nicole was not interested in the diamond, but she saw Zeke seem to like it and thought it was not bad. When another bid came again, she frowned as she fought back her desire to win. But she still entered a figure and hit the golden button. As the bell rang again, the blonde turned and saw the figure on the digital display. 80 million from box 2. All the smaller bidders looked frustrated, knowing that the price was already out of their reach as soon as they heard the figure. They looked jealously and grudgingly at the 10 private boxes above. Whenever people inside the private box placed their bids, the smaller bidders basically knew they had lost the bid for the item. Fortunately, so far, the bidders in the private boxes had only intervened a few times. Hearing the $80 million price tag, Chloe, who unabashedly followed Jared into the box 1, gritted her teeth. Her entire net worth was almost only $80 million. If the bid increments only a couple of millions, she might still have hope. But the other bidders raised the bid by $10 million each time. She really could not afford it. Chloe looked with pleading eyes at Jared, who was sitting listlessly in the box. He squinted, looking not too happy as he gazed at the auction floor. Jared had delegated the task of selecting auction items to Dino entirely, not expecting Dino to come up with only such an unexciting collection. Dino was standing respectfully to the side. He bowed his head and moved a step backward toward the gold marble behind him as soon as Jared swept his gaze over. Dino had a straight face, but the tip of his nose was trickling with sweat. Jared looked at him with a half-smile, and Dino finally could not help but say, "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnston, the quality of this batch of goods is indeed not up to much. But with the diamond, at least the auction will generate at least $100 million in revenue. That's why I have positioned this auction as a gold session. If it doesn't reach 100 million, I'm willing to be punished for it." There was a hollow, indifferent look in Jared's eyes when he heard that. His eyes upturned, and he did not look at Dino again but shifted his attention to box 2. This private box was too close to his position, and he was worried about his own safety, so it had never been occupied. But this time, a distinguished guest was inside and had raised the bid to $80 million. Jared started to find things more interesting. When the blonde saw no one was continuing to bid, she called out, "At 80 million once. At 80 million twice." Dino's heart sank. The penalty was inevitable, it seemed. Everyone who was present completely ignored Chloe. Chloe saw Jared had no intention of helping and could only grit her teeth and endure the pain, hoping that the other party would stop bidding after all. She could only come with Jared to such events once and did not want to let go of such a wonder item. But she could not afford such a high price. Just when the auctioneer was about to knock down, a bell suddenly rang from box 3. The blonde announced with excitement in her eyes, 85 million. 85 million from box 3. Chloe almost fainted when she heard the price. She really liked the diamond. The first time she saw the diamond on the screen, she told herself that this diamond would be hers. Wearing this diamond could enhance her value, whether it was in an advertisement or a movie. As long as she had this valuable diamond, she would outclass every artist and wealthy lady. With this in mind, Chloe gritted her teeth, stood up from the corner, and carefully walked toward Jared. She then put up what she thought was the most beautiful smile and said, "Jared, this diamond is really beautiful, but I have limited funds." Since she had cheekily followed Jared to come here, she might as well cheekily ask him for some money. Unfortunately, Jared did not even spare a glance at her but just looked at the screen in front of him, tapping gently with his fingers, looking as if a lazy snow leopard had not awakened. Nothing interested him. Dino looked at Chloe and whispered in Jared's ear, "Do you want me to kick her out?" Jared casually glanced at Chloe and said to Dino, "Just ignore her." Jared then looked at Chloe and said emotionlessly, "You have a good last name." Chloe was stunned, not knowing what he meant. The Riddle family and Jared did not really speak the same language, so why would he compliment her for having a good last name? Just when Chloe felt puzzled, the bell of box 2 rang. The blonde saw the figure on the monitor and announced excitedly, "At 90 million. 90 million from box 2. Zeke looked at the figure on the screen and gently frowned. "Lucifer, I'm not going to bid if it goes beyond 100 million. His highest valuation of this diamond was $100 million, which he could still get from the old man in his family. Paying anything more than that would not be worth it, and the old man would probably skin him alive." Nicole understood what Zeke meant and could not help but glance at him. She really wanted to look up who his ancestors were, as unlike what she thought, he seemed to be wealthy. Zeke seemed well protected and might be inexperienced in many things, but his keen eye was not something that can be trained in an ordinary family. This diamond was worth $100 million at most. Nicole nodded at seeing him looking at her nervously. She had wanted to bid for Zeke, and since he had also said so, she happily obliged. Box 3 was silent for a second, but before long, there was another bell ringing. The blonde looked at the figure on the screen of box 3 with relief. She announced, 100 million from box 3. The task given to her by the auction house was to make sure that the diamond was to be sold for $100 million. Otherwise, today's auction could not be called a gold session. Zeke heard the price and quickly shook his head at Nicole. Nicole got the hint and did not ring the bell. She stood with her arms folded, casually looking at the blonde knockdown. The blonde now had a genuine smile on her face. Congratulations to the guests of box 3 for winning the bid. Dino in box 1 breathed a sigh of relief. He gently wiped the sweat from his face with a handkerchief before turning to look at Jared. Jared ignored him and stared at box 2, impressed by them, who were smart enough to let up at the right time. Dino knew that he had escaped punishment this time. Chloe watched as the crew outside sent the tray to box 3 for inspection, her hand clenching so tightly that her sharp nails were about to rip apart her handbag. "That is my diamond," she cried in her mind. But Chloe had been in the entertainment industry for many years and could read faces. She knew that Jared's patience had reached its limit, and she was in no position to yammer in front of him. Chloe lowered her eyes, and no one knew exactly what she was thinking. Jared took his eyes off her and fiddled with a dagger in his hand with an expressionless face as if he were playing with a kid's toy. Only he knew what he was thinking. His phone rang suddenly, interrupting Jared's train of thought. He frowned at seeing the caller ID. "What's up?" he answered. Max's excited voice sounded on the other end. "Boss, we have found out the identity of Spectre. His name is Zeke Guzman, a first-year student of the Northern Institute. That's all we have found right now, but this is a good enough lead for us to dig further." Zeke Guzman. Jared's hand paused, and he had thought of something. No one knew that the first name of the army commander of Hustuaberg was Guzman. He smiled gently and said to Max, "That won't be necessary. I will ask Carlo." Jared mentioned the name of the army chief of Hustuaberg so casually that Jared seemed to have not the slightest sense of reverence toward him. Max, on the other end of the phone, was silent for a moment and put down his phone as if he had also just thought of this. He then looked back at Claus, who had a helpless look on his vacant face. Who is Lucifer? Even his partner isn't ordinary. Max found it incredible. The more he dug, the more shocked he was. Jared had hung up. He looked at the auction floor, but his mind was elsewhere. Pink Diamond had been delivered into box 3. The blonde's job was done, and she felt at ease. Next is a bonus session. The auction house will randomly select items we can't evaluate for auction. Everyone can bid for it and may likely get it at a low price. Speaking of this, she motioned with her hand, and the crew behind her came up with a tray that looked different from the one holding the pink diamond. It was simple and unpretentious, not covered with red cloth, and the contents inside were visible. Nicole was thinking of checking the progress bar on her computer. She could not take her eyes off the tray when she saw what was on the tray. It was a palm-sized silver-white shard with a cold luster that looked no different from a piece of scrap iron. Zeke, who had seen Nicole's motorcycle, recognized it at once. The material of the fragment seemed to be exactly the same as that of Nicole's motorcycle. He turned to look at Nicole. "Lucifer, this is..." There was an unusual look in Nicole's eyes. She looked at the fragment while the blonde on the stage was still babbling, saying, "This piece of material is very special. We tried various ways to change its form after the auction house got it, but whether it was cutting, burning, or processing it with modern technology, we could not make a dent in it. This piece of material is a rare treasure. Because the auction house has difficulty estimating its value, we have set the reserved price at $1 million. The audience looked at each other, not knowing why this scrap iron was worth $100 million. This amount was nothing to them, but there was no need to waste it on a piece of scrap metal. No one raised a sign, and neither the blonde felt it strange. After all, this thing really looked like just a piece of scrap metal. As tough as it was in resisting fire, it was only the size of a palm. What use could it have? Jared looked at the fragment with a grave expression. He then shot a frosty look at Dino. "You know what to do when you go back." He then stood up and walked toward the auction table in the box. Dino did not know what was wrong with Jared. He had checked and verified this piece of material and found nothing special about it except that it was tough. Yet Jared was angry with himself for this, wanting to punish him. Just now, Jared did not even bat an eyelid when the pink diamond nearly fell short of the $100 million hammer price. But now, he seemed to want to bid for the item. In fact, that was exactly what Jared thought. He wanted to raise the price to ensure that no one else would get it. But before he could do it, the box next door suddenly rang a bell. The audience was stunned, and the blonde looked at the figure on the screen and was shocked for a moment. Not that she had not seen so much money. She just did not expect that someone would spend so much money to bid for something with unknown uses. Jared was a step too late, and he squinted at the figure.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.